In 2009, following the success of Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, Capcom released Monster Hunter Tri. For the first time, the series was on a Nintendo console, and with that invited innovations. For the first time, you could play Monster Hunter with motion controls. For the first time, you could hunt monsters in the water, not just on land. And for the first time, hunters could fight leviathans and brute wyverns. The most iconic of the monsters added, of course, is Lagiacruz. However, packed away in that little title is a beast the likes of which hunters had never seen. I'm talking, of course, about Deviljho. Before I go any further, let me explain what this video is not. What I'm not going to do is go over the lore of this monster. There are much better channels out there that'll do a better job than me. I'm also not going to go over the ecology or evolutionary whatever. Again, there are much better channels out there that have done that. This video is just about how I feel about the monster, how I was introduced to the monster, and a little bit about its equipment. So, with that said, let's continue. Being a fan of the series for many years before I ever actually encountered Deviljho, I heard a lot about him. I've watched videos from prominent content creators long before I even knew what a Deviljho was. But my first encounter with Deviljho was in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. It was a Jaggy slaying quest. The point of the quest was to kill 10 Jaggia, the female variant of the Jaggies, and you go into it not thinking about it, and you're just looking for these little monsters. And after a little ways into it, once you get into Area 6, I believe, this little cutscene starts going. And you're looking at it and you're watching this cutscene. You're like, okay, why is there a cutscene on the Jaggia quest? I don't really understand what's going on here. And so when you're watching it and you see the great Jaggy there, and he's harping at his little Jaggies all around. You're like, okay, so now I gotta fight a great Jaggy. And then the camera points up at the top, looking down at the Jaggies from something else's point of view. All you see is the little snout with pokey teeth sticking over the thing. And then lo and behold, boom, there's this big, enormous brute wyvern just sitting there. And he jumps down on top of the great Jaggy, and the great Jaggy is just dead. And if I remember right, you could even go carve the Jaggy, but he's just dead. And you're thinking, what the heck is this? And then of course the battle music starts, and now the battle is on, and you're not thinking about what is this thing that that's here. You're just thinking, oh, well, I just need to get out of here because this looks mean. And then if you are brave and you do decide to go fight the thing, all it takes is a hit or two for you to realize this thing is way out of my pay grade. And so I remember that first fight, and it wasn't really a fight because I left. I didn't stay. I was like, oh, well, I'm not time for this. I think later on I did go back and try, but after he, knocked me out a couple times, I was like, nah, this isn't for me right now. So yeah, that was my first encounter with Deviljho, and I would wager, due to 3 Ultimate selling a lot better than Tri, that was probably a lot of people's first encounter with Deviljho. And it's very harrowing. You walk in there just thinking you're there to slay some little Jaggias, and then all of a sudden this tank of a monster just falls on you, and it's terrifying. So following that initial encounter, once I actually got the chance to get a proper fight with Deviljho. So a couple things that I've noticed about him is, one, he's just enormous, but he really isn't that strong when you're properly equipped. When you first encounter him, you really, it's one of the first quests in the lineup, at least in 3 Ultimate, and you're not really, you're not thinking you're going to fight some massive beast. You just, okay, I'm going to go kill a couple of these small things and come back. So when you encounter him, you're really not prepared. You're not mentally prepared. Your equipment is not really up to par because you're just wearing low-ranked stuff probably. Haven't had the chance to get new armor or anything or any weapons. But once you're equipped to actually fight him, he's really not as bad, at least in 3 Ultimate, as a lot of people like to say. You know, they like to point out how he's super powerful and he can eat your lunch, stuff like that. But, I mean, really, it just depends on, if you stand there and let him. Now, in 3 Ultimate, it wasn't quite as difficult because you had a little bit of an advantage over the Tri crowd, because in Tri, you didn't have as high a base defense. But after a while, that 50 base defense you get, the effectiveness really doesn't matter as so much. So when you're actually equipped to fight him, he's really not that bad. He is big, and sometimes he's hard to avoid his attacks because of how large he is, but he really doesn't hit very hard. Not as hard as I'm used to. I came from Freedom Unite, and I'm used to things hitting you and now you're dead, or hitting you and now you're basically dead. That really doesn't happen in games nowadays, really. So once he hits you, but you're wearing appropriate armor, it's fine. So I kind of want to talk about the design of Deviljho for a minute. Some people really can't picture just how large this guy really is. You see him on the screen when you're playing the game, right? And you know how big he is relative to your hunter, but you really don't understand how massive this monster is. So if you look up his average stats, right? So his average length is 20 meters, which is about 67 feet. And that is the length of 2 fire trucks, just regular old fire trucks, end to end. Any of you have ever seen a fighter jet, that is the length of a fighter jet. He is the length of a F-14 Raptor. And not only is he long, but the guy is tall. So his average height is 7 meters, or about 23 feet. The average United States light pole is 25 feet. So you go outside and you look up at the light pole. That's the height of a Deviljho. Like, he's enormous. And every time we fight him, you go into the room and you're looking and you're like, holy crap, this has got to be a gold. This thing's enormous. And then you kill him and it's not even a silver crown. It's tiny, but it's massive. It's the most distinguishing thing about him probably as a brute wyvern. It's just how enormous he is. But aside from his size, just looking at him, he looks ridiculous. A lot of people call him a pickle because of the texture of his skin, and really weird that they call him a pickle, because if you look at it, it looks like he's got teeth all over his body. He's got teeth going down his tail. He's got teeth going down the spine of his back. He's got teeth growing on the outside of his mouth and the inside of his mouth. He's just like, he's covered in teeth. And he just looks gnarly, like something wasn't right. Like when whatever caused him to be just took a wrong turn somewhere and said, whatever, we'll work with it. It's fine. Another thing about his design is his drool. With Tri, they introduced the exhaust mechanic with the monsters. And when Deviljho gets exhausted, it's really interesting because he doesn't really do an exhausted animation immediately. So he gets exhausted really quickly as far as the drooling. So he'll start drooling long before he ever does his exhausted animation. But something that people notice whenever he starts to bite them after he starts drooling is the defense down. So his saliva is acidic, so it acts like a lot of the insect attacks where they spit stuff at you or squirt stuff at you. It's acidic, so it drops your armor. And Cosmic, one of our teammates, always hates fighting him because he always takes armor drugs and armor pills and armor seeds. And every time we fight this guy, every time he gets hit, he's got to take another one to get rid of this stupid status that he can't stand. And it's an interesting thing because no other monster, just by their drool, inflicts that kind of ailment on you. It's just the Deviljho. We're not really going to talk about it too much right now, but Deviljho does have I think it's a variant called the Savage Deviljho. And basically, okay, I said I wasn't going to talk about lore, but I'll do it just a little bit. So basically, Deviljho is a very hungry Deviljho who's eaten other Deviljhos. So he's like the Deviljho of Deviljhos. And he's just covered in dragon element whenever he gets excited or he's in a fight. And it's the craziest thing. If you've never seen it, it's just nuts. There's also another version of Deviljho that shows up in a old Monster Hunter game, Monster Hunter Explorer. And basically, it was a collaboration between Capcom and Attack on Titan. So Deviljho, the skin that they gave him, was basically that of the Colossal Titan. So it's a Deviljho with no skin, and the dragon element basically is just steam that's coming off, just like the Colossal Titan. I've never fought it, and I've never seen any footage of it, but there are pictures around, and it's just the craziest thing. So, I kind of want to talk about the Deviljho fight now. One thing you'll notice fighting Deviljho is he's very aggressive. Like, crazy aggressive. On top of being really aggressive, another thing that you'll notice is he doesn't really do the exhausted thing. Like I said earlier, he'll get exhausted in that he'll drool and all that stuff, but he won't actually be exhausted like normal monsters. He's not going to stand around huffing and stuff like that. He will at some point, but not as often. So he's running around starving, but instead of stopping, instead of leaving and going to eat, he's just gonna beat the crap out of you. Another thing is he has a lot of attacks. He has lots of variations of bites, more than one variation of tail whip. He has throw moves. He has a couple stomping attacks. And his pin move is unique from the rest of the monsters, in my opinion, because he's the only monster that I know of in 3 Ultimate at least who can pin you at full health and you will die by the end of the pin if you don't get out of it or if you don't have some kind of dung bomb. It's just ridiculously damaging. When he's mad, all of these attacks are the same but faster and stronger, and he also gets his signature Dragon Breath attack, which of course applies Dragon Blight if you get hit by it. And in 3 Ultimate, Dragon Blight makes your sharpness fall faster, if I'm not mistaken. So if, for instance, you have some sort of fast hitting weapon like dual blades or long sword or sword and shield, and you get hit by this Dragon Blight, well, I mean, it sucks because then your sharpness gets worn down really quickly. He's just a beast when you're fighting him. Like I said before, though, as long as you have, adequate equipment for the fight, then it's not too bad. But he is very tanky. He will outlast you if you're not paying attention. Fighting him in Portable Third, there's the final village quest there is 1 Deviljho, and then following that, a Tigrex and Nargacuga together. And the Deviljho in that quest takes half of the quest for me to even kill, if I can kill it. And it's not so much that he's hard, but that I don't play Portable Third very much, and so all I have is a high-rank Jaggy set, and I don't freaking feel like grinding for something else. So whenever I go play it, I basically go play it with that set, and it looks, ridiculous. And so he hands me my butt every time because it's not adequate equipment. But he's so tanky, and you're just beating on him and beating on him and beating on him. And it's like, why won't you just die? Like, die, please. Please die. Why are you still alive? Yeah, he's a tanky boy. But again, he's never really too difficult to deal with as long as, you're properly equipped. Speaking of being properly equipped, I kind of want to go over his equipment just a little bit. I'm not going to go in super detail because I don't want to. But I kind of want to go over their design and what kind of commonalities that you can expect from them. So, not all of these weapons appear in all of the games. Like, for instance, Deviljho bow, if I'm not mistaken, only appears in World. And so some of these will not, appear in some games. And I'm not really going to say which because I don't remember right now, and the script is in front of my hand. So, it is what it is. So, starting off, I want to talk about the melee weapons. So, typically, Joe weapons will have dragon element attached to them in some way. They usually have blue to white sharpness when you first get them, and kind of empty out in purple, especially if you have sharpness +1. His gun lance shelling is usually the long type. Switch act file is usually dragon. Now the charge blade file is usually a power file. I think that's interesting. I don't really know that much about charge blades, so I can't really comment. There aren't typical bowgun shots. Deviljho bowguns don't really have rapid shots, at least not regular ammo rapid shots. If I'm not mistaken, the only kind of rapid shots that a Deviljho bowgun has are the special shots that are tied to the bowgun itself. But they usually run slicing ammo, dragon ammo, exhaust, flaming, freeze shots. That's usually the kind of ammo that you can expect to use with one of those bowguns. Again, the bow only occurs in Monster Hunter World, so its shots are a little different. But the bow does let you use power coatings and poison coatings, and I think everything lets you use close range coatings, so I don't really think that's super relevant. So let's talk about how the weapons look. So if you look at most of the melee weapons, really most of his weapons in general, you'll see a lot of them are basically tailored to the way Deviljho looks. The little teeth ridges sticking out all over his body are usually covering some of these weapons. The melee weapons generally have the red stripe going down them, kind of reminiscent of when Deviljho gets all angry and his muscles pop out of his skin. None of them really look particularly sharp, though. Like, for instance, the great sword is basically just a big club that's got teeth coming out of it. A long sword, too, it's just like a big mound of material with just teeth coming out of the side. And basically, most of the weapons follow this same kind of pattern. None of them really look particularly sharp or effective, but in reality, Deviljho weapons, when you get them, are probably the most effective weapons in whatever game you're in. Like right now, I'm running in 3 Ultimate a Deviljho longsword because it's the strongest thing that I have. Has the best sharpness, the best attack power. Jean too. So Jean is my daughter, and she plays Monster Hunter with myself and my wife Sparrow. And so for the last 3 months, we've been fighting Deviljhos to try to get a Deviljho gem for her to get her next Deviljho upgrade. And now that she has it, finally, that set of dual blades is stronger than everything else she has. So though they don't look particularly effective just visually, they're actually, they're some of the strongest weapons at any point in the game when you can get them. There's not too many that outclass them in power. Slime weapons are pretty good, but as far as just being strong, Deviljho weapons they're fairly good. Another thing about weapon designs is World, when it came out, one of the biggest complaints that it has is this bad weapon designs. Like everything just looks like a piece of metal or a piece of bone with some, monster skin layered on top of it or whatever. But if I remember right, Deviljho was, when he was added, was one of the first monsters that actually got special weapon skins. So like his weapons were one of the first sets of weapons that didn't look like the metal or bone with, monsters slapped on it. So when he came out and everybody saw the weapons, everybody went nuts. They were like, "Oh my God, this is so cool! Why couldn't they have done it from the beginning?" So yeah, there's that. So, another thing of Deviljho's that I run right now currently is his armor. See, since we fought so many Deviljho over the last few months, Cosmic and I, we we went and made a Deviljho set because we had so much. Unlike Gene, we had multiple Deviljho gems. So what we did is we went and made Deviljho armor because why not? And it was just supposed to be a joke thing, a meme set or whatever. But to be fair, there are a few things you can do with the Deviljho armor. Typically, Deviljho armor comes with attack skills and skills that, make you more powerful. So they're useful, right? Like, for instance, common skills in a Blade Master set would be like attack up, medium, large, sharpness +1. They also usually include speed eating, which isn't particularly, it doesn't really help power too much. But what it does do is it lets you pop down seeds and powder and pills and, potions and things like that really fast. But usually the sets come with drawbacks that are common to both Blade Master and Gunner sets. Usually they'll come with raised hunger, which means your stamina goes down bad. So, if you're someone who enjoys your stamina, you'll have to fix that unless you're in World, because then, yeah. Occasionally they'll also include on the Blade Master set stuff like Weakness Exploit, Part Breaker, Wrath Awoken, which is basically Adrenaline plus some other skill I should probably know. Usually the Gunner sets, they line up pretty good. They also come with the attack skills. They also come with Load Up and then Recoil Down. Again, they usually have the Raise Hunger negative skills, so you have to deal with that. And the occasional skills are the same as Blade Master. So the sets actually don't look too bad. They have the male sets usually look like you're a linebacker or something. The female sets are a little more streamlined. I'm not really sure, what exactly they resemble. They look familiar, I should know what that kind of looks like, but I don't. But what's interesting is the part of the armor set that you can change the colors of is basically the muscle lines that basically emulate his enraged state. Those are the things that you can change, which is really interesting because the type of green that the armor set is, there aren't too many colors that really go with that. So it's I'm just going to leave it how it looks because that is the only way it looks good. So, yeah, my main set right now until I get my G rank set is the Deviljho set that I have. Attack up, medium, speed eating too, I think, and then Gourmand because I like keeping my stamina up. I don't like running out of stamina, even though you don't really use stamina with longsword. It also has Razor Sharp. Yeah. Cosmic doesn't really use his set very much. His was basically, let's make it because we're goofing off and we don't have anything else to do with these materials. But anyway, so if you like to hit hard, Deviljho, his set isn't so bad. It's probably not the best set. I'm sure there are sets that do what his does better. But considering it's not really that difficult to make the set, the only thing if you have a gem, then everything else is pretty easy to come by. It's not too bad for a starter G rank set, especially in 3 Ultimate, which is what we're playing right now. So, yeah, that's basically been my thoughts on Deviljho. I quite like him. I'm not gonna say he's one of my favorites or anything, but he's definitely one of the better monsters in my opinion. I'm one of these players that like to feel a lot of pressure when I'm hunting. I don't want to feel like I can't really mess up. I want to feel like if I'm not on my toes, I'm going to get slaughtered. And Deviljho will make you feel that. He will. He's quick. He's relentless. If you give him an inch, he will murder you. And I like that. that makes things fun. And You know, not very many monsters recently can do that unless they're just crazy ridiculous. And of course, those are the only monsters people really remember. So in that vein, Deviljho, he's good. I quite like him. I feel like he might be a bit overrated. You know, before I first fought him, I heard lots of things about him. Oh, Deviljho, he's a demon. He's this, he blah, he da, he's gonna murder you. I mean, all the stuff that I said, except it was framed in such a way that he was almost insurmountable, which made me excited really to fight him. And then of course you fight him and it's like, I mean, okay. Okay. I mean, it's not like all that. And so, yeah. I mean, I think he's a tad bit overrated, but he is a good monster. And I like him. So, yeah. I've been Braun, and this has been Braun Talks Monsters. Deviljho.